All right, this is the problem that I've kind of been selling to you guys as the one to absolutely practice because it has all three rules in it. So breaking up, I'm going to add brackets to the parts that separate the numerator. But looking at it, just pause for a second and see if you can identify where the three rules are. So I'm telling you right now that there are the three rules. So it's going to be product, quotient, and chain. Pause and tell me where you think they are. Okay, so I'm going to put the brackets right here, and hopefully that makes it clearer. So the product comes from the 2t being multiplied by the whole sign piece. And then the quotient rule comes from the numerator being divided by the denominator. Like that one's pretty easy to identify. And then the chain rule part comes because there's a t that's not just t alone inside the sign function. So this, because it's special, makes it chain. So we're just going to jump in and go through. I'm going to write out my rules here. So I don't know how your professors explained it to you. I always, so if this is how it is, so it's the higher part and the lower part, the derivative is low d high minus high d low over low, which is just low squared. So, and the part where that has the d attached to it is the part that you're taking the derivative of. So we're just going to jump right in and start. I would give yourself as much space as you can because this is going to be a long one. So right away, I'm just going to take care of the low part. So it's 1 plus t squared. And then moving on, so low, we're just going to actually plug it in. So low is 1 plus t squared, and that's multiplied by the derivative of the numerator. This is the part that's a lot. So this is going to take product rule and then chain rule. Again, product rule is the first term times the derivative of the second term plus the second term times the derivative of the first term. The first term is 2t, so 2t, and the derivative of this is the chain rule part, so we're jumping right into the heavy part. So we left the first term alone, wrote it as is. This term, the second term, we're taking the derivative of it, and that's the chain rule part. So here's the parentheses. We're going to start with the outside. The derivative of sine is cosine. We leave everything else as it is. And since this is chain rule, we have to multiply it by the derivative of this piece, which is just 3. So that was the tough part. So we're through here. So now we're going to add the second term, so the sine of 3t times the derivative of the first term, which is just 2. Okay. So now we're through here. So we need to go minus, so now we're right here. The entire numerator written as it is, so just 2t times the sine of 3t, that's the numerator, times the derivative of the denominator. So let me extend this a little bit. The derivative of this, 1 goes to 0, t squared goes to 2t. So boom. This is everything written out all ugly. Now I would go through, technically this is the answer because you've done all the rules, but you got to go through and see if it not necessarily simplifies, because very rarely will these simplify nicely, but clean it up so that your professor has an easier time looking at it. So I'm going to draw this out again. So this term I would leave alone, so it's, oh boy, it's 1 plus t squared. And then inside this bracket, we can simplify it to 6t times the cosine of 3t. That's just this part being cleaned up, plus, move that 2 out front, 2 sine of 3t. So that doesn't exactly clean up perfectly, but it makes it so all the coefficients are up front. And then same thing here. So now we have minus this 2t can be multiplied by this 2t. So it becomes 4t squared times the sine of 3t. And depending on your professor and how they prefer your answer, they'll usually tell you in class. You can either FOIL that and have it written out as the fourth degree polynomial, or you can just leave it as this. Technically, it means the same thing. So if you're really concerned about it, ask your professor how they prefer it. The keys to this problem, we're writing out the rules. So this is the quotient rule. This was product rule. You had to identify the rules that you needed in the problem, write them out so that you don't forget them. And then the biggest part was this piece, not losing track of where you were inside the rules. So we ended up actually plugging the power rule in for right here. So that was the low. This whole piece was d high minus high d low. So there's always usually going to be one piece that's a little bit more painful than the rest of it. And in this case, it was dh for us. And that's usually the one where the two rules are right next to each other and normally chain rules involved. But, I mean, in terms of the length of this problem, as far as steps is concerned, this wasn't even the longest problem we did because the one before it had 5 steps and we skipped one. So this one really only had 2 steps. It was just a lot of nitpicky stuff to get in between these 2 steps, or to get even to the first step. So just go slow, take your time, and practice these problems. They're all over the internet. I'm sure they're in your textbook. Just practice the ones that have combinations of rules.